Have you ever felt invisible? Even while giving everything, you smile, you show up. You shrink yourself into shapes that others never notice. You say yes when your soul screams no. You wait to be seen, to be chosen, to finally feel like enough. And yet, silence. There's a certain ache that doesn't scream. It hums beneath your skin. A quiet grief no one talks about. The loneliness that lives inside connection. It's not that people leave you. It's that they never truly arrive. Not for you, just for what you provide, what you solve, what you soften. This is the hidden tax of being the strong one. Behind every compliment they give you, you're so understanding. You're always there. There's a transaction you didn't agree to. Your peace traded for approval. Your authenticity edited out in real time. Why? Because somewhere long ago you learned love is conditional, affection is earned, and safety means staying small enough not to disturb anyone else's comfort. But that belief, that identity, is killing you. You keep performing in a play where the audience never claps. You write yourself out of every scene just to keep someone else centered. And still, you wonder why you feel hollow. Jung said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. But you've never really tried. Not fully. You've been too busy auditioning for love that should have been freely given. So let me ask you, what if you stopped? Stopped running. Stopped giving from depletion. Stopped contorting your soul just to be liked. What would happen then? You weren't chasing them. You were chasing a reflection of something you lost long before they ever arrived. This is the wound few dare to name, abandonment that began before memory. Not always through cruelty, but through absence. The absence of attunement, of being deeply, fully seen. As a child, you adjusted. You became what they needed, what kept you safe, what got you praise. And in doing so, you exiled parts of yourself. The angry one, the loud one, the needy one. The very parts that made you whole. Jung called this the shadow, the parts of the psyche we disown only to find them projected onto the people we chase. You don't just want them to love you. You want them to love the pieces of you that you cannot yet hold. Every time you overextend, overthink, overgive, you're not loving them. You're bargaining with a ghost. You're trying to retrieve a part of yourself that was never welcomed. And here's the truth no one tells you. The ache isn't about them. It's about you. Because every emotional pursuit that leaves you empty was never a pursuit of connection. It was a pursuit of reunion, with the version of you that had to go into hiding to survive. When you chase, you're not weak. You're fragmented. When you obsess, you're not crazy. You're divided, seeking wholeness in someone else's eyes, but no one else can give you the thing you've denied yourself. No one can return to you, the self you abandoned to be loved. So here's the real question. Can you face the parts you gave away without needing someone else to validate their return? What if everything you believed about love was a lie? What if love was never something to earn, but you were taught to chase it anyway? Since childhood, the stories began. The princess is chosen. The knight proves his worth. The good child gets the praise. The quiet one is loved more. Obedience becomes affection. Achievement becomes worth. But no one told you this. Approval is not love. And yet you measured your soul against someone else's standards, hoping that if you performed just right, they'd finally stay, finally see you, finally choose you. But here's the question that slices deeper than most. What if the person you're chasing doesn't even see you? Not the real you, not the you behind the smile, not the you buried beneath years of overfunctioning and emotional shapeshifting. Because when love becomes a transaction, you disappear behind the price tag. You were never meant to hustle for connection. That's not love. That's survival dressed up in romance. And somewhere along the way, the fantasy became your prison. You believed that if you sacrificed enough, contorted enough, remained soft enough, someone would reward you with permanence. But love isn't a wage, it isn't a trophy. It isn't a finish line you cross once you've suffered enough. Nietzsche once said, the individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. And nowhere is that truer than in love, where conformity masquerades as safety. You've been sold a dream. But here's the truth, if love costs your identity, it's not love, it's self-erasure. So the question now is not whether they'll choose you, it's whether you'll stop choosing people who require your disappearance to stay. You keep calling it love, but what if it's hunger? Not the kind that fills, the kind that drains, the kind that leaves you aching after every interaction, questioning your worth. begging the silence to speak back. This isn't love. This is emotional starvation, dressed in longing. You wait by the phone. You replay the messages. You interpret indifference as mystery. You treat inconsistency like fate. Every breadcrumb feels like a meal, because you've forgotten what it feels like to be fed. You don't want them. You want the feeling they trigger in you, the hope, the possibility, the imagined safety of being fully seen. But the person you've projected that fantasy onto, they were never built to hold it. This is the anima, the animus. Jung's reflection of how we fall not for people, but for our own unmet needs. You saw in them what you lacked in yourself: stability, intensity, protection, care. They became a mirror and you mistook it for a door. But what if they were just a wall? They didn't abandon you. Not really. They were never truly with you. You were alone in the bond, building a home on a foundation they never agreed to lay. You are not broken. You're not too much. You're not hard to love. You're hungry for presence, for wholeness, for the parts of yourself you've long silenced, hoping someone else would speak them back to life. But no one else can feed that hunger, because the love you're starving for is your own. So let me ask you now, how long will you keep calling, paying a soulmate? There comes a moment, not loud, not dramatic, when something inside you simply stops. You don't send the message. You don't rehearse the apology. You don't explain your pain to someone who never asked to understand it. You just stop, not from bitterness, not from anger, but from clarity. This is the moment you disappear, not from the world, but from the emotional battlefield you were never meant to die on. You step back, not as surrender, but as return. Return to yourself. The silence that follows is not empty. It's sacred. It's the sound of your nervous system no longer scanning for danger in every delayed reply. It's the quiet of no longer auditioning for crumbs dressed as intimacy. This is the beginning of individuation, what Jung called the soul's path back to its own center. The realization that love, if it costs your selfhood, is not love but assimilation, that you cannot be whole while abandoning the very parts of you that make you real. You are no longer a performance. You are a presence. You no longer seek validation. You embody worth. And from this stillness, something strange begins to bloom. Not apathy, but sovereignty. Not coldness, but warmth directed inward. You stop asking, why don't they love me? And begin to wonder, why did I think I had to leave myself to be loved at all? This is the quiet revolution. No fireworks, no applause, just you, remembering yourself beneath the ache. Because sometimes the most radical thing you can do is not chase, not prove, not beg, but to simply disappear and watch who no longer follows. Absence is not emptiness, it's alchemy. The moment you stop chasing, something remarkable happens, not to them but to you. Your energy, once scattered across unanswered texts and unmet expectations, begins to return, slowly, quietly, like a tide rolling back to shore. And with it, your power. You thought your silence would make you disappear, but it's in silence that you finally arrive, because absence doesn't diminish you, it distills you. You become dense with presence, saturated with essence, no longer diluted by the desperate need to be seen. This is the paradox. The less you grasp, the more you glow. You stop leaking yourself into places that can't hold you, and in that pulling back you begin to reconfigure. Your solitude, it becomes signal. Your stillness, it becomes gravity. This is integration, the sacred dance Jung spoke of, between the anima and the animus, the inner feminine and masculine. When the nurturer within you meets the protector, when receptivity meets discernment, you stop seeking others to complete a blueprint you've now rebuilt inside. You're no longer a fragment, looking for its other half. You are the circle, whole, radiant, contained. And here's the secret the world never told you. Your absence is not punishment, it's refinement. It filters out the noise. It repels what cannot match your depth. It draws in only what resonates. With your truth, you don't attract what you want. You attract what you've integrated. So let them wonder where you went. You're not gone. You're becoming. You've spent years trying to escape the wound, hiding it behind accomplishments, numbing it with distractions, softening it with smiles no one questioned. But what if the wound was never the problem? What if it was the compass? Not a mark of failure, but a map. Not something to fix, but something to follow. Jung spoke of the wounded healer, the one who becomes whole not by avoiding pain, but by walking straight through it. You are not unlovable because you've hurt. You are capable of profound love because you have. Your scar is not a weakness. It's proof that you felt deeply and survived. And the pain? It wasn't punishment. It was a message. Every ache pointed inward, not outward. It was never about them. It was always about the parts of you calling out to be reclaimed. You didn't break. You broke open. Now, you see differently. You listen more carefully. You feel with a depth most run from. Because you've sat in the fire of longing and lived to name it, not as shame but as soul. This is your gift. Those who've never bled tend to love shallowly. But you carry oceans behind your eyes. And if you let it, your wound can become the well, where compassion rises, where empathy lives, where love is no longer a performance but a presence. So don't cover your scars. Don't hide your ache, because the very place you hurt the most is where your power is waiting. You've whispered it in the quiet. If only I were better. If only I were enough. They would have stayed. But what if the truth was not about you at all? What if their leaving was never a measure of your worth, but a reflection of their own inability to meet themselves? Jung said, "What you resist persists." They came into your life drawn by the very wound you hide, because wounds attract wounds. Like magnets, broken pieces search for familiar fractures. But when faced with your mirror, the raw, unhealed, unapologetic self, they recoiled. Not because you were too much, but because they were too little. They wanted the shadow you masked, not the shadow you owned. They wanted the safe version of you, the edited, diminished, quiet version. But what they found was a fire they could not bear to hold. This is not rejection. This is liberation. They never chose you because they could not choose themselves, and that hurts. It cuts deeper than any failure could. But here is the paradox. The very presence that scared them away is your truth waiting to be embraced. You weren't rejected because you were unworthy. You were rejected because you were real. And now, without the weight of their blindness, you can finally begin to see yourself. Whole, fierce, undeniable. Because sometimes the heartbreak you dread is the freedom you need. You stop chasing. You stop performing. You stop bending into shapes that don't fit your soul. This is not defeat. It's spiritual sobriety. The clear-eyed refusal to trade your essence for a crumb of affection. In stillness, you find something unexpected. Peace, dignity, a deep well of quiet strength that no longer depends on their approval. Jung called this path individuation, the sacred refusal to betray yourself for attachment. The moment when you say, "I will not lose who I am to be seen." Love no longer becomes the thing you die for. It becomes the thing that finds you, or passes by. Stillness is no longer loneliness. It is a signal, a beacon, a wordless message to the world. I am here. I am whole. I am ready to be seen, not used. When you embrace this, the noise around you fades. The desperate whispers of "please stay" become distant echoes. Your heart beats steady in its own rhythm, unshaken by absence or presence. Because you have chosen yourself. And in that choice, you have chosen a love that honors your boundaries and your worth. This is the quiet revolution. Not in chasing, but in being. Not in proving, but in allowing. Here, in this stillness, you meet the real you, unfiltered, unbroken, waiting to be loved exactly as you are. When you stop chasing, something shifts. You don't shrink into silence, you expand into presence. This is the law of emotional gravity. Like attracts like. But more than that, wholeness attracts truth. It's not manipulation, it's resonance. Your energy stops scattering in desperate reach and begins to pulse with a quiet, undeniable force. You become a magnet, not for attention but for genuine connection. Jung understood this as the dance of integration, the coming together of fractured parts until you embody a singular, coherent self. When you do this, you don't just want love, you become love. Your inner coherence sends out a frequency the world can't ignore. It's a signal that says, here is someone who stands without apology. Here is someone who carries their own light. Here is someone who will not be consumed. This energy draws in those who see, not those who take. Those who honor your boundaries instead of breaking them. Those who reflect your truth instead of distorting it. Love is no longer a chase across an emotional battlefield. It's a quiet orbit, a natural pull, a force of gravity you embody simply by being yourself. You don't need to prove, perform, or plead. You just are, and in that being, everything changes. Because when you stop chasing love, Arthur, you don't just find it, you become it. there is a shadow you've long tried to hide. A part of you fear will repel, reject, or ruin what little love you think you deserve. But what if I told you that shadow is not your enemy? Jung called it the shadow, the hidden, rejected parts of the self, buried beneath layers of fear and judgment, the parts you push away, ashamed to show. Yet here's the paradox. The more you run from your shadow, the more it runs your life. It lives in your silences, your anxieties, your compulsions. It pulls strings beneath the surface you present to the world. But when you embrace it, when you shine a compassionate light on the darkness within, you don't just heal, you ignite. Integration doesn't mean perfection. It means wholeness. Light and dark coexisting in the same breath, weaving the fabric of your true self. No genuine connection can form until you stop fleeing from the parts of you fear most. Because who you reject inside, you will unconsciously project onto others. This is the dance of shadow and light, the essential step toward emotional sovereignty and authentic love. Only when you own your darkness can you amplify your light. Only when you welcome the feared can you become truly magnetic, because it is the whole you, broken and beautiful, shadow and radiance, who commands the deepest loyalty. Not the edited version, not the performance. You, fully and unapologetically, are the only love worth chasing. Solitude. The word alone often feels like punishment. A cold room, an empty chair, the silence where no one calls your name. For the people pleaser, this is terror made flesh, the deepest fear to be unseen, unheard, unloved in the quiet. But what if solitude wasn't the enemy? What if it was the soil where your true self takes root? Jung said individuation, the becoming of the whole self, demands standing alone in the storm, not as exile, but as courage, to face yourself fully, without distraction or escape. This is the forge where love that never flees is born, because when the noise of others falls away, what remains is raw and real. No masks, no scripts, no silent begging. You confront the parts you hid, the ache, the longing, the shadow. And here, in the stillness, something sacred begins. You begin to love yourself in a way no one else can teach you. This love is not fragile or conditional. It does not rely on approval or applause. It is steady, unshakable, forged in the fire of solitude. So ask yourself, can you face the silence without running? Can you meet the reflection in the mirror without flinching? If you can, you are no longer alone, you are whole. And in this wholeness you carry a light no one can extinguish, because the courage to be alone is the courage to be truly free. It's time to own your story. Every scar, every ache, every hard-earned lesson. No longer the shadow of someone else's approval, but the sovereign ruler of your own emotional kingdom. This is the invitation to inner authority. Jung spoke of the sovereign and the warrior archetypes, not as agents of violence, but as embodiments of clarity, boundaries, and decisive self-care. The sovereign says, "This is my realm. These are my rules." The warrior says, "I defend my peace, I protect my worth." Will you stop outsourcing your value to those who never truly saw you? Will you stop begging for crumbs from a table that belongs to you? To reclaim your power means saying no without guilt, means choosing yourself in moments when it feels easier to disappear. This is not arrogance. It's not bitterness. It's the birth of authentic self-love, the kind that stands firm without needing applause, without shrinking in fear of rejection. Your emotional needs are not negotiable. They are laws written deep into the fabric of your being. When you claim this authority, the chaos outside loses its grip. You move through the world with a quiet strength that commands respect, not through force, but through presence. This is the moment you stop surviving others' versions of you and start thriving in the fullness of your own truth. Will you accept this invitation? The choice is yours. The power is yours. Love arrives, not as a desperate grasp, but as the quiet meeting of two sovereign souls. It is no longer a hunger to fill a void, but a reflection of wholeness, a mirror held up to your own light and shadow. Jung called this the dance of anima and animus integration, the coming together of inner feminine and masculine energies, balanced and complete within. True love finds you when you stop searching, when you stop reaching from a place of need and begin standing in your own fullness. It arrives not as rescue, but as recognition, not as possession, but as partnership. 2. Beings who no longer seek to fix or consume, but to see and honor. Here, love is not a destination. It is the continuation of a journey begun deep inside. a journey through wounds and shadows, through silence and solitude, toward the emergence of your true self. In this love you are free, free to be all of you, fractured, fierce, and beautiful. This is love that doesn't ask you to disappear. It asks only that you stand tall in your truth, and when it arrives you'll know, not because it fills you up, but because it reflects back the power you've always held, the power to be whole, the power to be loved, not despite your wounds, but because of them. The revolution was never out there. It was always within you, not about winning another's love, but reclaiming the love that was always your birthright. Remember the ache beneath your smile, the hunger that never seemed to cease. Now see it transformed, not erased, but honored. This is completion, not closure. The breaking of old patterns that once held you captive, the shedding of chains forged from doubt and desperate seeking. You have stepped into emotional sovereignty, where your worth no longer depends on someone else's reflection. Here in this quiet power, you live with a confidence that doesn't shout, but resonates deep and steady, like the earth beneath your feet. Jung's words echo through this transformation. To love oneself is the beginning of a lifelong romance. This romance is with your whole self, shadow and light, wound and wisdom, silence and strength. No longer fragmented by longing or fear, you are the architect of your own soul. The quiet revolution within has begun, and it will never end, because it is the essence of your becoming. You are no longer chasing, begging, or hiding. You are simply powerfully wholly you. Love is not a place you arrive at. It is a river that flows, sometimes fierce, sometimes still, carrying you through cycles of falling and rising, breaking and healing. This is the eternal circle of becoming. Individuation, Jung said, is never complete. It is an ongoing journey, a dance without end between shadow and light, loss and discovery, surrender and sovereignty. When you stop chasing, you open the space for life's deeper mysteries to unfold. You become a witness to your own unfolding story, one that will twist and turn in ways you cannot predict, but always toward more truth, more wholeness. This is not a path for the faint of heart. It requires courage, the courage to face what you fear, to hold your wounds gently and to keep walking when the way is unclear. Yet in this courage, there is a quiet strength that cannot be shaken. It is the strength of someone who has looked into the abyss and chosen to become their own light. So step into this circle, knowing you are both seeker and source, forever becoming, forever evolving. The journey of love is infinite, and it begins now, with you, not chasing, but becoming.